Hello, everybody. This is Dr. David Jockers, and today we're talking about 5 steps to heal autoimmune disease naturally. We know that over 250 million people all around the world are dealing with some sort of autoimmune disease. I mean, it's literally an epidemic. As a clinician, I see it all the time. I've worked with, at this point, over 500 different cases of autoimmune disease. We've seen dramatic results. And I'm going to really go through 5 foundational steps talking about the right foods, lifestyle strategies, key supplements to help shut down autoimmunity and to give your body the best chance to heal naturally. So if you don't know me, my name is Dr. David Jockers. I am an expert in functional medicine and really helping people overcome chronic issues and get to the root cause of their health problems. I'm also a specialist in helping people improve their energy, their digestion, and their overall quality of life. This is my beautiful wife, Angel. My little boys, David and Joshua, and we reside just outside of Atlanta in a town called Ackworth, Kennesaw, Georgia, that region of Cobb County, Northwest Atlanta. And I own a clinic called Exodus Health Center right out in this area. So let's jump into this. We look at autoimmune disease. We know that there's over 100 different types of autoimmune disease out there. They affect the brain. You've heard of things like multiple sclerosis, and autism is thought to be autoimmune, where the body actually has antibodies to different tissues in the brain. Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is a terrible disorder characterized by autoimmunity, where the body is actually attacking itself. And that's what autoimmune means. It's the body basically is attacking itself. It's creating antibodies to these different tissues, the brain, the blood. Okay, leukemia is thought to be autoimmunity, even though we consider it a cancer. It's the body attacking itself. We've got issues with the digestive tract, issues with the peripheral nerves, lung issues. The body is attacking itself with these types of issues. In the skin, we look at eczema, scleroderma, psoriasis. The muscles, we've got rheumatoid arthritis, of course, affects the joints and the bones, but can also affect the fascia around the muscles. We've got things like Hashimoto's and Graves' disease. These are all autoimmune disorders. Again, the body's attacking itself. And so we look at the normal immune response, and basically we've got these antigens, which could be like pollen, for example. Food particles when we eat food. Okay, that's a potential danger, but it's not necessarily a danger, of course. We eat. Pollen shouldn't be a danger, but the body can attack it as an antigen, okay? And typically the body will, and bacteria, different things like that, the body may form antibodies, and they will damage, they will take out that antigen, okay, without causing an excessive immune response in our body. With autoimmune disease, though, we form antibodies, okay, to antigens that are very similar to our own tissue, okay, and we lose function of the T helper, T regulatory cells. Those, their overall function is to help discriminate between non-self and self tissue, and we end up losing the coordinated function of those in autoimmune disease. In fact, that's one of the keys. The strategies we're going to talk about really regaining the function of the T regulatory, the T helper cells, so we can discriminate between self and non-self tissue and reduce antibodies to our own tissue and chronic inflammatory processes to our own tissue. And so we know that autoimmune disease is really a three-legged stool. What I mean by that is there's 3 major components. Number 1 is a genetic predisposition. Genes do play a role, right? They're about 30% based on genes. If you have a genetic trait that may make you more at risk for an autoimmune disease, and then you provide these other 2 legs, okay, and those other 2 are a leaky gut, and we're going to go into that in more detail, and then some sort of an environmental trigger, and that could be a chronic stress, like an emotional stress, a relational issue, family problem, you lose a job, you lose a pet, or a child, right? Some sort of major emotional stress. It could be a chemical stress, which is really bad food, bad air, bad water over a period of time. It could be a physical stress, like a car accident or a trauma that just overwhelms your system, and that triggers on this genetic tendency, or this genetic this genetic component in your system that starts creating these antibodies to your own tissues. Okay, so this is really how this works. And we know, again, a balanced immune system, okay, we shouldn't have this overreaction. We should have a really balanced response, which allows us to kill off bacteria, viruses, kills off abnormal cells that are developing. A healthy immune response hunts out and regulates cancer cells. We don't develop cancer if we've got a really good, healthy immune system, because our body has kept that under control. We don't develop allergies, asthma. We don't develop autoimmune disease if our immune system is balanced. Okay, the key is balancing and modulating our immune system. And that really comes down to really good function from our T regulatory, T helper cells that are produced in the thymus. These cells are so critical for helping tame and balance out the immune system. So this is a key slide to remember right here. If we are underreacting, our immune system is not reacting well, okay, so we have immune suppression, for example, okay, which there's a lot of medications that do this to us. In fact, they give the medications to people with chronic inflammation. They'll give them things, basically steroid medications, corticosteroids, which suppress your immune system, which increase your risk of cancer, hepatitis, HIV, shingles, TB, bacterial infections, mold or fungal infections, parasites, viruses. Chemotherapy does this, right? Chemotherapy basically suppresses our immune system, which makes us more at risk for developing infections and other kinds of infectious disorders. And so that's important to remember. But if our immune system is not balanced and it is overreacting, we're creating these antibodies, now we start developing allergic reactions, right? Food sensitivities are an example of that. Asthma, allergies, eczema, right? Autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, type 1 diabetes, colitis, lupus, Hashimoto's. And so again, it's all about having the right balance of T regulatory cells and basically T killer cells. And so we need to have the right ratio there. We need to keep our body from overproducing antibodies. Antibodies, to some degree, we produce antibodies to all of our tissues, and that's normal to produce some. Okay, if you were to get your antibodies tested for your thyroid, for example, your TPO, your thyroid peroxidase antibodies, you will have some of those antibodies, right? And that's normal. I don't think I've ever seen a lab test where somebody didn't have any of them, but it should be kept under control, right? If it's high, okay, and typically I look at high as, in a sense, really over 20 on the TPO antibodies, okay, that's going to be really high, then that's a sign the body's overreacting. So if it's like 6 or 7 antibodies, not an issue. It's kept in balance, kept in check, but that's really what we're looking at there. So you're going to create antibodies. However, it should be kept in balance, kept in check, and that's the key. So here are the 5 steps to reduce inflammation and reduce autoimmunity. We got to really address the gut. That's pretty much where it starts, addressing the gut and balancing the blood sugar. We got to look for food sensitivities. We can't heal our gut if we just keep reacting and creating more inflammation to the foods that we're eating. So we've got to really address food sensitivities. And we use a food elimination diet to do that. We need to optimize our vitamin D levels. Vitamin D is so critical. It plays a role in over 2,000 genes, right? So genetic characteristics in our body. So vitamin D is just so critical for taming the immune system, helping with T regulatory, T helper cell function, just so absolutely critical for that. If we're low in vitamin D, we're at significantly higher risk of developing autoimmune disease. And we need to boost up our glutathione levels. Glutathione is our body's master antioxidant, and it is super critical. If we're producing antibodies, increased amount of antibodies, is a sign we're glutathione deficient. So we have got to fuel our glutathione levels. And vitamin D plays a key role with our body's own endogenous production of glutathione, meaning within the cells, their own production of glutathione outside of what we're consuming from nutrition. So vitamin D plays a role with that. And that's why vitamin D plays such a critical role with autoimmune disease. So leaky gut, okay, how do we develop this? Well, basically in our intestines, we only have one cell wall layer. Okay, and the reason why is because throughout the history of mankind, food was scarce. So we needed to be able to absorb whatever nutrition we could get because we would have a lot of times of famine. In today's society, we very regularly, we don't have times of famine. Most people are eating 3, 4, 5 times a day. They're over consuming more so than they're under consuming. So we're putting a lot of wear and tear on that gut membrane. And we're rupturing these little tight junctions in the gut. And what kinds of things can do that? It can cause irritation, inflammation in the gut. Well, undigested, poorly digested proteins, right? Or in general, just certain types of proteins. Like research has been showing that gluten, for example, the common protein molecule that's found in wheat, barley, rye, kamut, and spelt, that protein basically triggers the release of a intestinal peptide called zonulin, which ends up increasing the laxity of these tight junctions, which promotes intestinal permeability, or the breakdown of these tight junctions and the opening of these intestinal cells, kind of like what you're seeing here in the middle of the intestinal cell. And so consuming these sorts of dietary proteins, casein is another one that's a protein found in dairy. And then, really whatever sensitivities you may have, because it could be different proteins, it's going to be different proteins for different individuals. For some people, almonds, they can consume those without a problem, but other people, they consume almonds and they're having autoimmune type reactions, chronic inflammation. So dietary proteins can definitely be a contributing factor with this. It's typically the protein portion. Sometimes, like, you'll hear about lactose intolerance, for example. It's a sugar, right? But for the most part, it's typically the dietary proteins, because those are most similar to bacteria and yeast and things like that. And you think about it, really the reason why our body creates this sort of response, sort of autoimmune response, is because we know that systemic infections, or infections that damage our entire body, in a sense, are the number one risk factor. That's what killed more of our ancestors than anything else. So the body's adapted to create antibodies to help prevent against that, to help kill off and ward off the infection before it kills us. And so dietary proteins, many of the proteins in these foods look similar to bacteria. When our immune system's out of balance, like we showed in the last slide, we can start to create reactions to those dietary proteins. And those dietary proteins also look like many of the tissues in our body, because the tissues in our body are made up of proteins. And so that can end up leading to autoimmunity. Okay, let's jump into the next one. Low stomach acid and enzymes. So if we're not digesting our food well because we're not producing enough digestive juices, then we're going to have undigested proteins and other fats and carbohydrates getting into our intestines, which is going to promote more inflammation. It's also going to promote more fermentation by bacteria and yeast, which overall is going to cause inflammation in the gut, which will damage the gut lining. So we need to make sure that we're producing good amount of stomach acid and enzymes. I talk a lot about that in many of my videos. Antibiotics, because they damage the gut microbiome, cause an overgrowth of antibiotic resistant microbes like yeast, okay, for example. Candida is antibiotic resistant, and those types of microbes are not good for our body. They release a lot of toxins that will loosen up this junction and cause leaky gut. And in general, infections, right? So if we do have overgrowth in yeast, if we have an overgrowth in E. coli, if we have an overgrowth in different dysbiotic bacteria or parasites, it's going to cause more inflammation in the gut and damage gut lining. Blood sugar issues is going to play a big role with this. When our blood sugar's off, it's going to cause laxity and inflammation in the gut. So we got to keep our our blood sugar level stable. The next one I was looking at there is antibiotics. Now, this is antibiotics not prescribed, but this is antibiotics in our diet. So like if we're consuming commercial raised animal products, good chance that animal had antibiotics either in their feed or, given directly to them, or like it could be dairy, for example, non-organic pasteurized, not pasture raised, dairy from a feedlot. It's going to have a lot of antibiotic residue, and we're taking that in. That's going to damage our microflora and cause more issues here. Pregnancy, like, believe it or not, pregnancy opens up that gut junction. It creates more laxity, so it can lead to leaky gut. I know my wife, she had twins and had a lot of digestive issues that she didn't have prior after the pregnancy. And one of the reasons is because, basically through the pregnancy, it damaged her gut lining, right? It caused issues there. So we got to take time to rebuild it. Pregnancy is a very, obviously very intense experience, and it's very challenging on the human body. And so we do need to take due diligence to take care of ourselves afterwards. And speaking of that, menopause also, so for women, they're challenged because they're, in their adult years, they're oftentimes having kids, and sometimes not just one, but multiple pregnancies. And then once they hit 50, 55, they're going through menopause typically, where they drop their estrogen progesterone ratios drop down, which can cause issues with the gut as well. So, we got to take due diligence during these periods of times. And that's one reason why women have a lot more autoimmune disorders than men. About 80% of autoimmune disorders are in women, not as much in men. So this is one of the reasons, okay, because of those risk factors. Environmental toxins, pesticides, herbicides, these things cause inflammation in the gut. Food allergies. So if we are having allergies, right, or sensitivities to foods, then we're going to have issues. And then chronic stress in general. We've all been under stress, and we're under stress for long periods of time, a lot of chronic stress. It's going to cause issues with our cortisol, adrenaline levels, which is going to cause issues with inflammation and leaky gut. So all these different factors, I mean, we're really very much at risk here of developing leaky gut. And if we have a genetic predisposition, that's going to make us much more susceptible to developing autoimmune disorders. Okay, and they can affect any tissue of the body, like we already talked about. Okay, so where do we start when it comes to overcoming autoimmune disease? Well, one of the best ways to start is an elimination diet, right? Because if we're eating foods that our body is having an inflammatory response to, then that's going to cause an issue with stomach acid, right? Because stress is the antagonist to digestive juice production. So when we're under stress because we consume something that our body deems is stressful or poison to us, then it's going to shut down production of digestive juices. That's going to slow down the movement in the gastrointestinal system. It's going to cause more bacterial microbial overgrowth because they're going to have more fermentation. We're not going to be able to absorb nutrients well. We're going to have these damaged gut cells, and it's going to promote leaky gut and just cause a vicious cycle, right? Like a snowball developing into an avalanche. Okay, it starts out with, we're under stress, let's say. Okay, we don't produce enough digestive juices, we don't produce enough stomach acid, food goes through our system not digested well, causes inflammation in the gut, causes fermentation, opens up the leaky gut. Now that undigested protein gets into the bloodstream, our body creates antibodies and creates inflammation. And then it tags it, and over time it starts developing a stronger immune response every time we consume that food, which now, because our body's under stress in general now, we're not producing enough stomach acid or digestive enzymes or bile. So every time we eat, we're causing more stress. And it's just like a snowball, it just continues to pick up. So we've got to really shut that down. We got to use a good force. And sometimes that means just pulling out some of the most common food irritants, which are, we talk about gluten, dairy, particularly dairy protein. A lot of people with autoimmune disease can handle things like grass-fed butter or ghee, but taking out the cheeses, taking out milk, things like that, for sure. A lot of people react poorly to eggs, unfortunately. People have autoimmune disease or chronic inflammation. Sometimes they react poorly to eggs, sometimes legumes, nightshade vegetables, especially with pain-related syndromes if you just deal with chronic pain in general, or even rheumatoid arthritis or something like that, definitely trying to take out the nightshades, tomatoes, bell peppers, peppers in general, regular potatoes, and eggplant is a big factor with that. So you take those out, you should see a big change in your pain levels. Vegetable oils, right? Definitely soy, canola, things like that. I see a lot of people react to those things. Corn in general, we want to avoid that. Shellfish, oftentimes a lot of food sensitivities related to shellfish. Peanuts are another one. So taking these things out, and a food elimination diet has been shown to help the body heal leaky gut because it takes stress off the gut, which of course helps downregulate antibody production in the body, which reduces autoimmune symptoms. Helps with our digestive tract. If people are dealing with things like eczema and acne and psoriasis, stuff like that, they see a major change. And this is all research based. A lot of research on migraine headaches, for example. People have a food sensitivity to, let's say, peanuts, right, or to dairy, right, and they come off of that, right, for a week to 6 weeks, 1 to 6 weeks, and they see a big change with it. So it also helps you just understand how your body reacts to food intolerances, and also really can be really helpful for kids with learning disorders. People don't realize that. A lot of parents don't realize that kids that are just not learning well, are hyperactive, things like that, oftentimes they're reacting poorly in their gut. And we say leaky gut equals leaky brain. And so when the gut's damaged, it's going to cause more inflammation in the brain, and it can affect the brain to where the frontal lobe, which helps coordinate higher level activities and helps give us more social tact and focus overall, we're not able to use that because our body's under stress. So we use more of our limbic brain, brainstem area, which is hyper impulsive, right? It's trying to it's more built for survival. And so it's very hard for us to focus and concentrate because of this. So food elimination diet can play a big role helping people with that. So again, most common sensitivities: gluten, dairy, refined sugar, eggs, corn, soy, these various vegetable oils. Typically, I'll take people off all grains, shellfish, tree nuts. And we talk about almonds. A lot of times people are reacting to nuts, right? Different types of nuts, legumes, okay? And then, of course, nightshade vegetables. And so, this is a great slide right here. Just remember, hey, take these things out of your diet for a period of time, okay, and see if you notice a difference, right? Just doing that step can be big. And so how do you really follow this elimination diet? Well, you take those types of things out, or you could start with just one food if you want to. Just take out corn, like in this example. You read labels to make sure you're not consuming small amounts of that, because sometimes you don't know. You think that you're avoiding it, but you're actually not. So this is really important. You read labels, you ask questions if you're at restaurants, make sure you're avoiding these foods, or else it's not truly an elimination diet. Use a food journal to kind of track how you're doing. Like, you want to know, hey, my brain function. Yesterday I was a 4 out of 10. I had really bad brain fog. Okay. Today I'm a 7 out of 10. I feel definitely a lot more mentally clear, but not optimal, right? So you're writing things in like that. Like, my sleep quality was, a 6 out of 10. My skin, my acne's clearing up, right? Or I had an outbreak, of acne. And so by following a food journal and writing it down, and then kind of going through how your body's responding to this, you're going to get a lot of biofeedback, feedback from your biology that you're going to be aware of on how your body's responding. And then, over time, you start adding back some of these food irritants slowly and isolated, one at a time. You add it back, right? And you should give yourself 3 days or so adding that food back before you would consider adding something else back. Okay. And we also talk about pulse testing in order to see how your stress response is to the particular food. So, that's a big thing too. And observe for changes in your symptoms overall, right? So we want to see, hey, what kind of changes are you experiencing? So again, journaling about that, so critical when it comes to following the elimination diet. And I see a big mistake a lot of people make is they don't really take the time to see how to basically chart how they're feeling, how they're responding. So, they don't get to a 10 out of 10. They see improvement. They don't get to a 10 out of 10. And they think, well, I'll just add these foods back in. And they add them back in oftentimes too quickly. And they don't see the inflammation process, right? Because they're not really trying to take the time to be aware of how they're feeling. And that can cause basically the inflammatory process, the autoimmunity, to come back. So we want to avoid that for sure. Okay, blood sugar balance, so critical. When we eat a high carbohydrate meal, blood sugars can go way up. Insulin, which is a pro-inflammatory hormone, goes way up. Okay, then we get a hypoglycemic reaction. It's called a reactive hypoglycemia, where because we overproduce insulin, now boom, blood sugar drops way down, and now we start to have major issues because hypoglycemia sets off a stress response in the body, sets off panic in the body, and that's going to cause more inflammation, hormonal imbalance. So we want to consume low carbohydrate meals and really follow good strategies to keep blood sugar balanced. And in the article that goes along with this video, I talk more about how to use diet to help keep blood sugar stable. And then definitely supporting vitamin D. Vitamin D is so critical for brain development, immune system, for calcium metabolism, for helping our body prevent autoimmunity as well as cancer, and for helping reduce inflammation in our blood vessels, right, our arterioles, to help reduce the risk of heart disease. So vitamin D, definitely key. Getting regular sun exposure is the best way, okay? But it's hard to get enough sun exposure to produce enough vitamin D. Ideally, somebody that's very pale would be out with at least 40% of their body. So let's say, a bathing suit 3 times a week, okay, for 20 minutes in the middle of the hottest period, basically the sun's most intense between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. So 20 minutes 3 times a week for somebody that's real pale. Somebody that's a little bit more tan, they're going to need a little bit more time, probably 30 minutes, okay. Somebody that's darker, perhaps has got a little bit of Spanish in them, Hispanic in them, maybe 40, 45 minutes. And then somebody who's black skinned, African American, they're going to need like an hour 3 times a week in a bathing suit, sunbathing, in order to produce enough vitamin D to keep their levels optimal. So oftentimes for many of us, taking vitamin D supplement is going to be key, especially if you live in the northern area. Okay, so here I am in Georgia. If I have good sun exposure, I can get a lot of good vitamin D really almost all year round. But once I start getting up around North Carolina over in the States, I can't remember exactly the latitude of it, but once you start getting up in that area, then really about probably 100 miles north of where I'm at in Atlanta, then the chance of getting good vitamin D production in the wintertime goes down significantly. So that's a key thing to remember right there. Closer you are to the equator, the easier it is to get the vitamin D production. So for most people, they're going to need vitamin D supplementation. I typically recommend that. And that's something that we test for at my clinic, and online you can order our total thyroid test, which will actually test your vitamin D levels. Okay, so it looks at that as one of many things. It looks at your insulin levels, your blood sugar, C-reactive protein, so inflammatory levels, a number of different things on that test. So you can check that out. Okay, 5 key nutrients that are supplements that I will recommend typically right off the bat for people with autoimmune disease. Definitely optimizing their vitamin D, zinc as well. Most people are deficient in zinc. Okay, unless you're really supplementing with it, you're most likely deficient in zinc. We're just not getting as much from our diet. And heavy metals, as well as things like copper, they compete with zinc. So most of us are getting things like lead and mercury into our system. The better our zinc levels, the better our body is going to excrete those sorts of heavy metals. It's going to protect us from heavy metal exposure. So taking zinc regularly, just so key for the immune system, helps tame the immune system, really good for thyroid, helps with T4 to T3 conversion, reduces inflammation in the body, really key for estrogen metabolism, progesterone production, as well as testosterone production. So really valuable supplement there. Zinc, glutathione levels, boosting that up with, you could do with precursors like N-acetylcysteine, alpha-lipoic acid. You could also do it with a liposomal or acetylated glutathione, which is a great approach to boosting up glutathione levels. And omega-3 fatty acids, super key. So getting in long-chain omega-3s, EPA and DHA, the ones you get in fish oil or krill oil, not the ones you get in flaxseed or walnuts, okay? So that's really important. Those are fine. You can do some flaxseed, ground flaxseed or flax oil. You can do a little bit of it. I don't recommend like massive quantities. You do walnuts, but you know what? That's not going to get you the kind of omega-3s that are going to really help you heal autoimmune disease. So now I've got a product called Pro Omega CRP on my store. And I love using that product with autoimmune patients because it has got liposomal curcumin, which is the active ingredient in turmeric, which is powerful for downregulating inflammation. It's also got liposomal glutathione, so it penetrates right into the cells, boosts up our glutathione levels, and of course, it's got the long chain omega-3s, the EPA and the DHA from fish oil. This is great. Probiotics, definitely want to support that microflora, so getting a good probiotic in there too is very valuable. So those are 5 key nutrients I would recommend. And, in general, if you have an autoimmune disease or chronic inflammatory condition, and you're just like, hey, what do I really do? Like, I want a full program to help me get well. I developed my autoimmune elimination program for you, if that's the case, where this really has all the different guides and videos where I walk you through action steps to take to put you on the road to heal autoimmune disease naturally. Okay, this really ultimately is, this program is like spending, you know, whole 3-day weekend with me in a sense, right? Like 72 hours of my time, just, you know, with me for 3 full days, me teaching you everything. Now, if you were to hire me for a long weekend like that, I charge $10,000 a day, so it's $30,000. Good thing is this program is nothing like that as far as cost goes. You know, it's significantly, it's less than $100, which is great. And you can do it at your own pace. So it's not, you know, slamming it all in a weekend. You can basically take it like a college course where you're taking small doses, watching one video a day, maybe, right? Or, you know, trying in one or a few new recipes every week. You know, you get a shopping guide, you get a guide that helps you rebuild your stomach acid levels. I have a guide that shows you how to do pulse biofeedback, food sensitivity testing, a 6-week journal where you're able to basically chart. So we talked about that, really charting how your body's responding to everything. A guide that helps you understand how to heal your adrenals and balance out adrenal fatigue, and then of course a manual for the whole program. We also have a whole video library with over 50 videos where I'm going over recipes to make. I'm going over all different types of action steps and supplements, and how to incorporate different eating strategies to help your body heal autoimmune disease, as well as lifestyle strategies I go over in these videos as well. So anyways, I mean, just incredible value here. We also have 42 days of email. So you get a daily email for 6 weeks where I give you inspiration and support all along the way, really helping answer a lot of frequently asked questions and supporting you on the journey. So it's really helpful. We also have a Facebook group with our functional nutritionist in there helping answer questions that you may have. So just try to provide a ton of support to help you get well naturally. Now, normally on drjockers.com, this program is $97, and you can find it right on our programs tab on drjockers.com. For a limited time, because you watch this video up until this period of time, you can use the coupon code AI30 at checkout. It's AI30 at checkout, and that will save you $30 on the program. I'll bring it down to $67. So enormous value. Again, if you want to get all of this content from me and with me, it's going to cost you, anywhere between $20,000 to $30,000. But it's all bundled into this program for less than $100, $67. So great value. So I hope you guys ultimately got a tremendous amount of value from this video in general. And I look forward to seeing you guys on a future online training. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our channel so you get all of our latest updates and latest online trainings. God bless you guys, and we will see you later. Bye.